Hello, class. My name is Ryan Horton, and this is my presentation on my classroom experience and the improvements and celebrations I believe I have for my classroom for this last and the last few years. Currently, my teaching philosophy is that every student has their own unique identity that deserves to be celebrated. And my goal is to promote a sense of lifelong learning so that students remain students of every experience they have for their entire lives. This also means making sure to connect to their cultures and their backgrounds and their personal interests so that I can understand their identities. And this also helps me foster strong relationships to encourage mutual support between them and the community and myself and their community. To do this, I use multiple means of engagement, expression, and assessment whenever possible. I admit that there are times when my well runs dry, and I will be working on that in the future. But right now, I do constantly use whiteboards. I allow for verbal response, text response. Students use computers. They collaborate with their peers. They do small group presentations, individual writing, larger group projects or individual, more artistic products, and I even allow them audio and video recording options. We do several novel studies in my class over the course of the year, and we base our writing practices and collaborative work on the content of those novels using Kagan based discussions where students constantly interact with each other and share their own thoughts and opinions. I do a lot of reflection writing in journals and on their computers, and I encourage group activities where they work together to create something based on the content we're covering. Most of our content is processed using personal whiteboards, though. That is my favorite tool. And I will have them write their beliefs or their ideas or their answers down on a whiteboard and then share them with their partners at their tables or desks to facilitate a discussion. My assessments generally include quizzes and tests related to the reading, vocabulary, and grammar content. Our projects are almost always student choice, multimedia projects, where they have their choice between um, video, artistic, textual, or even something simple like creating a Google slideshow. And then I have writing projects and activities like essays, stories, and poems. I do believe that all students should have a chance to learn. They deserve this chance, and that means they need to be able to show their learning in a way that is most effective for them. And I need to deliver that learning as well in a way that they are most able to see and understand. And so my classroom is meant to allow for this. It's a space where they can move around, where they can access different tools for expression and different methods of accessing these different types of content. Now, I do still notice that I rely very heavily on quiz based assessments like Google Forms and for short term assessments, especially. I do weekly quizzes on a lot of my chapter readings. And I do believe I can still improve the visibility of my learning goals and my success criteria. I very often will say them out loud. We are learning about this today, and this is what we will be able to do by the end of the day. However, I have yet to consistently write things down. I have a very large whiteboard at the front of the class, which I generally used to use as a student schedule. I'm trying to convert that into a bulletin board where I simply have the success criteria and learning objectives on that board every day. But I will keep following up with that. My go to assignment styles do tend to be text driven and independent, like journal rights or critical thinking response questions on quizzes. And that does leave fewer room or fewer options for expression. And I will continue to work on that as well. My next steps are to include more standards based learning goals into my readings using the noun and verb practices that I've learned in this course. I'll break down individual standards based on essential questions from my personal units for our books. And I will continue to foster relationships with my students. And as those become easier, I'll also try to branch out and build relationships with their families as well so I can more actively be a part of the community. And especially in terms of assessments, I believe I have the most room for growth. I'm going to look for particular purpose behind every assessment. I want to have this concept of a success criteria behind every assessment that I do, so that I am constantly going through student data and able to and being and determining if that success has been met. And I do a lot of experimenting with my physical space. I've noticed so far that for my particular style, that includes a lot of collaboration. Um, Having tables with groups of four, pods of four, where students can work as small groups, is so far the very best. And that represents the physical space in my classroom, which in turn also represents my philosophy really well. So thank you very much for coming to my presentation. And I appreciated the course and the chance to learn with you all. Thank you, and have a wonderful day.